Hello, everyone. This is Rick with the Space City X-Files podcast. I'm glad to be together with you again. We got a good show. I enjoyed doing the research, and I think you're gonna enjoy hearing the results. This is going to be a topic over the mystery of the Kabwe skull. And if you're wondering what the Kabwe skull is, you're going to hear all about it in just a second. Be right back. Okay. So, mystery of the Kabwe skull. It's no big secret that big game hunting has a huge market in today's world. Some will travel to all ends of the world for a chance to hunt the best game and spare no expense in acquiring the best gear to give them the edge over the prey. But what makes hunting exciting? Is it the act of taking a life? Does it bring on a connection to simpler times or a distant ancestor? Maybe some would say all of the above. Then again, some may still simply hunt to put food in the fridge or on the table, which is completely understandable. Me personally, I can get a good look at a T-bone by sticking my head up a bull's butt, but I'd rather take the butcher's word for it. And that was our movie quote of the week, brought to you by Space City X-Files podcast. We'll be here all week. Tip your waitress. So, to what extent would an enthusiast go to hunt the best game in the world? He would travel through terrain. He'd probably travel to all ends of the earth, but would he travel through time? Impossible, you say. That's impossible, Rick. Nobody can do that. Well, I don't blame you. I don't blame you that you said that. Because scientists have come to the same conclusion when looking at this Kabwe skull. And why is that? Well, that's because the skull has a bullet hole in it. Okay? And this thing is 300,000 years old. So how could a skull dated so old have a bullet hole in it? That in itself should be an impossibility, yet forensic scientists say it couldn't be anything but a bullet. So let's dig in, shall we? This is the mystery of the Kabwe skull. And before we begin this amazing tale, let me get the announcements out of the way. Space Series X-Files appreciates you being here and appreciates any support you provide for the show. If you would like to become a member of the show, you can visit our website, click on the Patreon tab. Once there, you can sign up, and for just $5 a month, that gets you access to extra shows and bloopers, and any other content that we release to members only. It gives you access to a Discord group for direct contact. We're going to be on there chit-chatting with you, having fun, playing games and stuff. And guess what? You're going to get some free merchandise, and we're just going to drop that on you at random times, okay? There's a shirt that we just received that's up on the website. That could be yours too. And if you're not quite ready to become a member, that's fine. But if you would still like to make a donation, on the website there's a support us with the tip tab, and there you can type in whatever amount your heart compels you to give. We love you, and it's all appreciated the same, so no worries. Another way that helps immensely is whatever platform you're listening on, whether it be Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon, Google, whatever. Leave us a written review there. And by letting us know how much you loved the episode or letting us know how much it sucked, that's going to help us continuing our growth, okay? So in conclusion, no matter how you decide to support, whether it's by a review or some money, everything we receive is all distributed back into the show for your enjoyment. And you probably noticed that we got some new sound and some better quality coming through now. And that's all because of you. You've done that. So thank you so much. All right. So let's start. Let's start where the skull was found, and then we'll work to present day. It's June 17th, 1921 in northern Rhodesia, now known as Zambia, Africa. Tom Zwigler of the North Rhodesian Mining Company is working on an ore pocket down in the mine located in Kabwe, or also known as Broken Hill. Now they're about 60 feet down working on this sucker, and they discovered something amongst the debris that resembles a skull. Now this is Africa in the 1920s, so they would have been digging by hand, of course, with picks, which sucks for them, but it works out for us because that allowed them to be able to find the artifact, so it was kind of a good thing. And so one guy pulls it from the rubble, and he finds Tom, and he shows Tom what he found, and Tom's no paleontologist, and I'm not making this up. He literally puts it on the end of a stick and uses it to scare his workers. I laughed my butt off when I read that part. The guy had no clue what he was holding. And continuing on, he says they keep digging. They also find other things around the same depth. Objects that even resembled some tools, stone tools. It's worth noting, too, that they also found a bone, a leg bone, and an arm bone. And so they put all this aside and continue working. It's not until a local doctor that works for the company sees the skull and notices that this thing is unique. Okay, so I couldn't find any record of how it went down, the exchange between the doctor and Tom, but if I had to guess, it would go a little something like this, okay? This is a dramatization. Doc comes to work one day to check and make sure no one's died, and Tom comes out with this skull strapped to a stick. And he's probably like, "Hey, Doc, look what I found down there. Ooh, it's going to get you." And the doc's like, "You found that down there? Give me that, you buffoon." And so the doctor recognizes that it's a skull, but it's definitely not human, but it's very close. So he sends it off to the London Museum to have it further analyzed. Now, once it arrives there, it's further examined by Arthur Woodard Smith. And he drops the bombshell and confirms what the local doctor suspected. The skull was unique, and it turned out to be the very first of its kind ever found. It turns out that it even falls into a new category. That's right, it's a new category. And although since it's not the same as the previously discovered Homo sapien, which is said to be the most common discovery of humans, or the Homo neanderthalensis, which is said to be considered a subspecies of the humans, this new guy would be dubbed with the name Homo rhodesiensis, or also known as the Homo heidelbergensis. Say that 5 times. Never mind, don't try it. You'll just fail. Which all these were said to be a contemporary of each other. So that means that they were all living around the same time. They probably, had date night together or something. So, wow, I mean, can you imagine digging in the ground and you find a whole new human-like species? This single finding has caused many in science to rethink our past and reconsider what we thought we knew. So I won't go too much into ideology about evolution or creation because that can take us way off topic. So I'll just say this much to give context to the mystery of the Kabwe skull. Now, depending on who you ask, some would say our human race didn't begin showing signs of behavioral modernity until around 160,000 to 60,000 years ago. So, according to science, that's when people started thinking abstractly, started planning things out and becoming symbolic. The crazy thing is about the Kabwe skull. Remember that they said it was found with stone tools at the same depth? Well, that would have meant that this species had the ability to not only realize they needed a tool, but were working intently at something, okay? And being that it was discovered around an ore pocket, it suggests even further that they may have been trying to harvest the metal. So now logic would say, well, no metal artifacts were ever found from around that time, but that wouldn't be completely correct either. For one, I'm sorry, for one, metal oxidizes to rust in a few years. If you've ever seen nails in an old fence rust away, then you've experienced this yourself. But just because this happens, it doesn't mean that the nail was never there holding the fence together. Furthermore, an object from that time period was said to be found, and you'll probably scratch your head at this, but it was likely to be a spark plug. For time purposes, we'll just go over the basics of this, but I will include the link in the show notes, and I definitely recommend you check this out. So it's 1961, and Wally Lane and his team go into the Coso Mountains in the Inyo National Forest near Death Valley, California, looking for unusual rocks. And while on their expedition, they stumble across a fossil encrusted geode, which is a fossilized rock that is usually hollow inside, containing a type of crystal. And they open the geode, and to their surprise, they find something that looks like a spark plug. And it looks like that it had been broken in two. So the object, it dated. Somebody they had somebody take a look at it, and they date it to around 500,000 years old. The object is said to have a metal core about 2 millimeters in diameter, which is noted to have responded to a magnet test. Around this core was a ceramic casing, which was also enclosed in a hexagonal piece of wood, which had now become petrified, which takes several thousands of years to do. Okay. Now, on the inside between the ceramic case and the metal core was a trace of an extremely old piece of copper. How, I ask? But that's not it. At the base of the object was a washer and a nail, which most likely was a conductor to the adjoining power source. A scientific researcher pleaded with Wally to allow him more time to further evaluate the object, since so far only x-rays were performed, but Wally was chasing a payday, and so he said the object was going to the highest bidder at $25,000. Since then, no one has been allowed to been able to test the subject, though they have been able to inspect it. Many people have tried to debunk it, but people still find mystery in it. It's truly sad. I mean, given these examples, it really challenges what we've known traditionally. And we're told that humans have been the only species that had the ability to think abstractly and the intelligence to thrive with ingenuity. But this contradicts that theory. As research continues, we can't make much more progress without more fossils to study, unfortunately. So we need more. So far, though, we've heard some pretty amazing things, have we not? This case doesn't stop here, though. No, far from it. Remember the introduction, we still must find out where this bullet hole and the time travel hypothesis comes from, and it wouldn't be a Space City X-Files episode if we only presented the logical facts. So let's get into the weird and the unexplained now. I know that's what you really want to hear, right? So, let's start with the mysterious bullet hole. One very odd thing that was discovered in the Kabwe skull is on the left temple there was a small, perfectly round hole, and inside the parietal plate had been completely shattered. How did this happen? What caused it? Well, we can eliminate the possibility of it being a blunt, low-velocity object, like a spear or a javelin, because a German forensic scientist who had the chance to examine the skull ruled that out completely. So he states, had it been a spear or javelin or arrow, the point that came into contact with the skull would have caused small cracks or splinters in the surrounding area called striations or radial cracks. And since none of these were found, It was unanimously concluded that the object that caused the hole would have had to travel at an extremely high velocity. The German forensic scientist who studied many, many gunshot head wounds came right out and said, it undoubtedly is a bullet hole. So now, strangely, none of these findings were mentioned anywhere on the display at the museum it's located in. While doing the research for this episode, I can confirm too that most pages, this information is left out, which is odd. So I imagine it so it doesn't take away from the fact most scientists find more important, which is the fact that this is a new species with human likeness. And so the other part I don't understand is the museum won't let anyone investigate into the bullet hole either. Some small testing was done to get the data around which time period it's from, but other than that, that's basically been it, and it's pretty much held hostage. The area in which it was discovered, now Zambia, Africa, has been in talks with the museum to possibly have the fossil returned. So they want their stuff back, And but according to them, the museum has been very uncooperative from what I understand, from what I read. Which is a shame. I mean, in my opinion, it should be returned. So whoever that skull belonged to in times long ago was obviously native to that land. So they should be allowed to go home, don't you think? And also perhaps Zambia would be more accommodating in letting people do further tests so they can find out more about it. So this has not been the only strange case, though, where bullet-like holes were found in fossil skulls, surprisingly. In Russia, along the Lena River, an ancient skull belonging to something called an auroch, which is a now extinct type of ox, was found with a very small round hole in the middle of its head. So here we go again. The skull had the same features that the Kabwe skull had, no striations and no little radial crack. So it wasn't a low velocity object that hit it, it was high velocity. The hole had the same features of the Kabwe skull, but it did have a little bit of a difference to it, okay? Because this hole had a little bit of calcification, meaning that it tried to heal over some time. And it also indicates that this hole didn't kill the animal, okay? So it lived for some time afterwards. Because it tried to calcify, okay? So what does this all mean? Well, the impossible seem improbable in this case, is what it seems like. And, I guess it really all depends on what you think. It's not what somebody else thinks. You can't let somebody else make your mind up for you, right? So, but if we had to guess, it would say, I guess it means three different things. Either one, the skull is not as old as it was claimed to be, and it was shot during an era when firearms were already present. This is certainly a possibility, but the depth in which it was found tells a different story. The sediment around the skull was a very important key factor in determining the date of the fossil. The only way somebody would have tricked somebody would have been to dig the hole and pull the skull out and shoot it, then put the skull back in the ground and bury it up, only to unbury it again and say, oh, look what I found. But then the soil around the area would have shown signs of disturbance, okay? So usually when a hole is dug and reburied, the topsoil mixes with the bottom, and it would have shown in the tests, okay? Theory number 2 would be the skull was planted, which we kind of got into the scenario 1, but a test on the sliver of the skull itself had been performed and determined the circa age, okay? Or scenario 3, the skull was shot hundreds of thousands of years ago, but by something or someone who was technologically capable of having a firearm or a type of device that would create high velocity projectiles. So the soil samples and carbon dating basically rule out 1 and 2. So what does that leave us with? Well, according to the evidence, we have to assume it was shot by something. So let's take a look at some suggestions on what this may have been, okay? We'll start with the most logical and then we'll work to the strangest. One scenario states that a possible meteorite or shrapnel from one could have rained down and killed our poor Rhodesian man. Same case was made for the Ark as well. This could happen, I guess, but the size of the hole makes me very skeptical about this. Also, what about the fact that the skull was found down in a cave? You have to guess that that's where the man actually died, because that's where he was found. And if that's the case, how would the meteorite find its way into the cave and hit the man perfectly in the temple from the side? And although being killed by a meteorite can happen, it's super rare. So it's like 1 in 200,000 chance. Another scientist claimed that the hole was caused by some sort of infection. It was also likely the cause of death for the Rhodesian man was a tooth infection. Going back to the infection that caused the wound, it said the infection would have weakened the tissue around the area and eventually cause a hole to form. This one here, I don't really know. I'm not really qualified enough to say yes or no. I'm not a doctor, and I didn't really look too much into it, but I just have to say maybe. The only thing that makes me doubt this claim is that what about the parietal plate inside the skull that was blasted to pieces? How would an infection cause a perfect wound on one side and then complete chaos on the other? So that's the only contradiction there. And moving on, this is one theory we touched on earlier. Somehow back then the technology to create high velocity projectiles was present. Science would say not. The first firearm capable of such feats wouldn't appear until around 1200 CE, but then again, science also said that humankind didn't have the ability of abstract thought until around 160,000 to 60,000 years ago. Yet the Rhodesian man was found with tools around him, suggesting he was working or harvesting the ore down there. And he was said to be about 300,000 years old. So since scientists do not dispute the age of the skull, there's obviously some things that are just not accurate in terms of what older ones were capable of, okay? So King Solomon said that there's nothing new has been done under the sun. Nothing new has been done under the sun. Meaning most things have been repeated regarding our society. If it's our nature, it's usually some trend that closely resembles one from our past. And if it's technology, well, it's been said that people often look to nature for inspiration. Could it be the Homo Rhodesians created something that could fire projectiles like a gun? Were they using it against each other? Well, I hope not. I would like to hope that people hundreds of thousands of years ago didn't face the issues that we do today. That somehow simpler times were more peaceful times. But I may be wrong. So on this next one, you might think it's a plot from a science fiction movie. It suggests that someone from the present time traveled back and shot the Rhodesian man and the ancient Ark. So from what we know currently, time travel is just a hypothesis. If we could travel back in time, for sure we'd be doing it already, right? Right? Well, oddly enough, there sure have been many cases in which people claim to have cracked the case on time travel. If you're not familiar with any, I would recommend that you take a look at the Montauk case. That would be a good place for you to start. Or you can listen to our podcast, episode 1. If you remember that, it's about the simulation theory. So one of the main arguments made that eventually a simulation of humans would be created. The main argument would be to allow people to implant their consciousness in various different times along simulated history. This in turn would allow them to study and learn and experience what really happened in the past. Eventually, it would become like a vacation people could take. Anybody remember the movie Total Recall? So you would go to this office and tell them what time period you wanted to visit and who you wanted to be on this experience, and they'd start typing it in the computer, and the computer starts making some bleep bloop noises, and the next thing you know, you're there, dude. In the case of the Rhodesian man and the orc, some hunter was like, oh yeah, I want to go hunt some extinct shit. And so they zap him and his cooler full of Bud Ice over to ancient Africa 300,000 years ago in the past, and it's on. So he spots his targets, and he has his fun, and then he zaps back home. Only, in this simulation going forward, the Rhodesian man and the orc would still have the bullet holes, which will explain why they were there, why the holes were there in the first place. And it would also mean that we are living in the situation in which the hunter visited. Did that just blow your mind? I mean, I would definitely explain some of the unexplained crap that we've seen happen on this earth, Things that are here are happening that shouldn't. Sometimes we chalk it up to aliens or the supernatural or paranormal, but really it's just the creators of our simulation taking vacations here and screwing things up. Okay. Now, there's so many different theories on what this could be, and for time purposes, we just chose the most that stood out. But if you find this case interesting, do a deep dive on your own investigation. Don't let your curiosity stop with the end of our episode, because there's just too many crazy, interesting facts to put into one show. And unfortunately, we got to leave a lot out. So this could really probably be a 2-part series if we wanted to, but we got to get working on next week for the project coming up Tuesday. So what we'll do is we'll wrap it up with one more, and this one here just blew me away, and it goes like this. Scientists have found different skeletal remains of species that resemble humans, so we know that much, right? So there's the Neanderthal, there's the Homo sapiens, which is claimed to be us, and now we learned about the Homo rhodesian. So, but what scientists don't completely understand is, when did humans actually start becoming aware and civilized? They think they have it narrowed down to about 160,000 to 60,000 years ago. And we talked about that, which is a really big gap. So what if we, as in humans, were not any of these 3 species? So we weren't the Homo sapiens. What if our race was some intelligent life form that came to Earth around the time of these 3 species and basically took over? So it's been said the scenario would go like this. So we examined Earth, and we found it more beautiful or more suitable than our own, or we just wanted to expand our own race. So a few of us, or a couple thousand of us, come to Earth, and we find the human type figures already inhabiting the place. These people are strong. They're much more resilient to the harsh elements than we are, of course, not being from the planet. So we examine and decide which species is the best out of the 3. And after the determination that the Homo sapiens are the dominant species, we start interbreeding with these ones so that our offsprings can become as tolerant to the weather as they are. Now, once this has been accomplished, we wipe out the other 2 species. This is why you find some with bullet holes. This would also be the reason why no other intelligent life form on the planet other than us have been found. When I read this, I was like, holy shit. I mean, it's crazy. I know, right? But is it really that crazy? I mean, it's crazy to think bullet holes are found in something 300,000 years old, or that a spark plug was found in a 500,000 year old geode, but here they are. So this reminded me of a movie too. When I first read this, I immediately thought of Chronicles of Riddick. You remember with the necromongers coming, invading, and then they'd make everyone into them by transfusing their blood. And so here's the facts, girls and guys. And, the included theories are here for you to ponder on. So listen to the episode, listen to it again, and just really let them sink in. And then, whether you buy into them or not, it's still interesting. It's interesting to think about. Me, I personally, I would like for one of them to be true. The last theory seems pretty tripped out. It's pretty crazy. It's far out there, but it would make a hell of a story to tell the grandkids 50 years down the road, But theories aside, something truly remarkable has been found in the Kabwe skull. Even if you leave out the bullet details, it's still amazing to know that there was another human-like species roaming around, living his best life. And, can't forget that he was found with possible tools around him. So that right there is amazing too, Although it may take a miracle for us to ever unravel the truth as to what happened in this case, it's still amazing to know about it. And I, for one, will keep checking in on it from time to time. Faux show. All right, well, I think that's going to pretty much do it for this case. Thanks for being here again. It was a pleasure to be able to share all this interesting information I found with you. And if you have your own theories and would like to share them with me, then you can email me at info@spacecityxfiles.com. That's info, INFO, @spacecityxfiles.com. And I would absolutely love to hear what you think on this episode. Before we go I'd like to add that even though we haven't gotten any reviews on the episodes yet, we still have received so much support from you. And I just wanted to take a little time to say thank you and give a few shout outs. So bear with me here for a second. So far, our podcast has only been live for 20 days. And thanks to you guys, we already have over 250 downloads all over the world, and that is just amazing. I can't thank you enough for that. I would like to especially thank our friends who listen in the United Kingdom, in Germany, in Canada, and shout out to the listeners in Israel, Croatia, and Turkey, and here in the United States. Whoever you are, you guys or girls are the best, and thank you for your support. And send me an email if you get a chance. I'd love to talk with you sometime. To all the homies that are listening from War and Order, thank you so much. I'm not as active as I'd like to be, but I plan on playing full time again soon, and I look forward to burning your castles down. With love, of course. Alright, that's all I had for this time. So peace out, guys. We'll see you on the next one.